talking more about the national circumstances and what's happening in UAE and all their efforts. Um, this is just to give you an idea about how we perform in UAE, and if we were to kind of compare it with some other regions in the world, we do have a very high carbon footprint intensity, and as you can see, these are some of the figures that we have in terms of the ecological footprint per capita, energy and water consumption, even bottled water consumption as well. And basically, this is something that we should keep in mind whenever we talk about climate change, because even though that we are a small country and that maybe our emissions compared to the rest of the world are not that significant, but we still do have a role to play, especially since if you can see here that due to our consumption patterns, if the rest of the world were to have the same consumption patterns, that we would need around 6 planets just for our resources to be met. So this is just to share with you a roadmap that the UAE is on. We have the Green Economy for Sustainable Development. We have Dubai JEP Green Economy Partnership. My colleague Sasha from Dubai Carbon is also involved in that. We have Expo 2020, Vision 2021, DICE 2030, and a lot more strategies that are currently in place and a lot of initiatives that are in place. These are some of the entities who are also working on it, some of the strategies that are also involved. And you can see there are a lot of efforts in this respect, but I mean, this is just to show you what's happening right now, but there's always room for improvement and for more. I'll quickly take you through our case study here, which is about GHG accounting. I'm not sure how relevant it would be to most of you, but it's very relevant if you're talking about people working in organizations, when you can take this back to your environmental team and kind of, shed more light about what you can do as part of your organization or your company to help meet some of our goals in reducing our energy and our emissions. Basically, we have different levels of GHG accounting and GHG inventories. We can do it at a national level, like for example for UAE as a country. We can also do it at a community or a city level, like for example in UAE we have Emirates, so we can have it per Emirate, per Dubai, or per community, like a sustainable city, for example. We also have it at an organizational level, so your separate companies can also have their own carbon footprints calculated as well, and also for a product life cycle. So if you have, we've done one for My Dubai, for example. So for bottled, sorry. That was loud. So for bottled water, for example, you can have the footprint of the whole life cycle of the product, from manufacturing to the water to desalination of the water. All of that will be involved. So it's really interesting to see that, and for you guys to kind of get an idea about what's going on and some of the reporting measures that you can use as well internally. Basically, this just talks about the IPCC and the guidance that we use and all the reporting that's involved and the verification and all these steps which we can help you with later on. Well, this talks about the objectives and why you should go on with it, with having your own, either an organization. I mean, this can be applicable for all GHG inventories, but I've taken the organizational footprint as an example because most of us here might be coming from organizations, and this is what we might be more interested in. So some of the objectives, it's because you'll have a comprehensive GHG inventory. It's going to be standardized using tools. It's going to be cost effective as well because you have guidelines set in place, so you don't need to waste your time calculating emissions and savings. There are clear methodologies for how to perform that. You can also showcase your mitigation performance because you'll have a monitoring and reporting and verification strategy in place, and you'll be able to know how you performed last year, how you performed this year compared to your last year, and if your mitigation initiatives and efforts have actually worked or not. It will also help you to basically, if you would like to aggregate or the all the inventories, the organizational inventories, you would have the subnational, like at an emirate level or at a national level inventory. It can also help you to demonstrate your importance as an organization in terms of tackling climate change and how you can play a big role. So basically, these are just some of the advantages that you can have. Of course, it's also good for your marketing and for basically to show your CSR and to show that you're more responsible for your actions as an organization. These are just some of the principles that we follow while while making and compiling the inventory. I'm not going to go through it in detail, but as you can see, they're just basic principles. As my colleague Mariam mentioned, we have some of the gases here, the GHG gases, and basically this showcases how we divide up your emissions in terms of different scopes. Scope 1, which are direct emissions, Scope 2, which are indirect emissions, but because of your organizational operations, and Scope 3 emissions, which are indirect emissions, but happen either upstream or downstream of your organization. So basically, this is just how we categorize the different emissions and sources. And as you can see, I mean, just to give you a quick example, something like Scope 1 would be your process emissions or whatever that you do in your company. If you have your vehicles, like RTA, for example, would have their taxis and buses, public buses, and their metros and trams as their Scope 1, whereas Scope 2 would be something like if we are here in this hotel, for example, it would be the electricity and the water and the utilities, which we use, but are actually produced by DEWA, for example, in Dubai. And Scope 3 would be everything else that is upstream or downstream of our process. For example, it could be the waste that we generate, but are treated in the landfills at Dubai municipality, for example. So just giving you an update. Now this is just I'm not going to go through that. It's basically our approach to calculation, taking the activity data and emission times the emission factor to get your emissions. I'll give you an example, which you can go through later on, but just to kind of jump into how we calculate it in our data collection, we get it per sector, per your section or department, and we'd like to get detailed breakdown of activity data. I'm going to skip through that. For the emission factors, of course, we have our internal database at Dubai Carbon, which takes into account the most updated emission factors which you can use. There are also others available online, but if you'd like something that's country-specific or even emirate-specific, then we have that with us. This is just the methodology and how we end up calculating the emissions. We'll have the activity data from you, the emission factors from us, and then the tools which we develop to be very specific to your organization and to your activities, and then we calculate the emissions. This is just an example of how the reporting would be, and of course we'd help you with developing the whole report according to the guidelines, for example the ISO 14064 guidelines for organizational footprints. Then we can also help with monitoring and goal setting as well, different types of goal setting and how we can monitor and see if you're meeting targets year on year. Basically, I'm just going to give you a quick look about the different types of inventories that we have compiled in the past. We have a national inventory system, which is more of an automated national inventory. So it's also at a national country level, but it's automated. Everything is calculated with a software, so there is less human interaction, and which means less errors, and it's more of a smooth running software. We also have the UAE GHG inventory, which we've developed with Ministry of Energy, and in the past with Ministry of Environment, Water and Environment. We also have the Dubai GHG inventory, which is basically with the Dubai Supreme Council of Energy, and that's at an emirate level, so it's at a subnational level. We also have a lot of carbon footprints that we've done for different organizations. We've done one for DIWA, for Dubai Police, for ITA, and for Emirates Transport, DUA, and so on and so forth. And then for the product footprint, which I mentioned earlier, for My Dubai, for the water bottles. So yeah, this is just basically a summary of very quick summary of what we do at Dubai Carbon. And if you're interested in, I don't know, getting together and kind of discussing anything further, then please feel free to approach us, and we'll see what we can do together. And if you have any questions, please go ahead. Okay, thank you. Yeah, we do. There's something like shadow pricing, basically taking into account the possible pricing of the ton of CO2 equivalent. Yeah, we do that, and we can discuss this further later on. But I mean, that's something that even in Dubai or in UAE, it's still a very slow-moving market, and it's not really something that's has been well developed here. But of course, you never know what could happen in the future, and this is something that can suddenly turn into a big money-making.
My colleague has mentioned we look into it, but we look into it from the sense of green procurement. And when we look at the life cycle of the product, like say for instance, you want to purchase a car. So would you want to purchase a hybrid car, or would you want to purchase a non-hybrid car? And then you would look at the cycle over 10 years or 15 years or even 20 years, how much it would cost you. The upfront cost might be more expensive, and we looked into cases like, for instance, air conditioning, where the upfront cost of the air condition, the environmental friendly or the more efficient air conditioning system would be much higher than the normal air conditioning system. But if you look at it from a point of view of 10 years or 15 years, you actually see that there is a huge reduction in your energy bills, thereby balancing out the... So we look at it from a perspective of the organization, and what the organization purchases, what it has in its procurement list, and what are the most significant products that they look into. And based on that, we developed this shadow pricing in the context of green procurement. Mm-hmm. Yes? What about your thoughts about the carbon credits model? That's you.
For carbon credits, well, I mean, basically, we do help our clients to get their CDM projects registered, and I kind of went through that really quickly. But yeah, I mean, sure, we can. There are currently 15 projects in UAE which are registered, and a lot of that, most of them were registered by us. We help them with the whole process, and what happens is that they do get registered with the UN, and then basically they have to get valid